Hello, we are going to look at the resources, the new resources updated in Reveal that will help you in your math class. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised at the resources that are available now. So we're going to work our way through planning a lesson. I've chosen 8th grade as a source of one of their lessons to go through. So notice I'm on the Surry County Schools curriculum instruction page in Canvas. You should all have access to that. Since I'm doing 8th grade, I'm going to click here. I'm going to choose math and 8th grade. That's where my pacing guide's going to be. I'm going to go ahead and click the printable version just so it'll open up a little larger for you. So this is, most of the pacing guides are very, very similar. There might be just a few changes. Like if you have compacted math for 6th and 7th grade, those will be included in your chart as well. But these are your links to your curriculum guides. These are suggested times for those units, and this is obviously a suggestion. This is not going to be exact for every teacher, but we should be pretty close. If there's any changes that's been made, they'll be listed at the bottom. And then this is going to be your topic guide for ALEKS, something that you should know for this year starting. Your ALEKS is going to be organized a little better for you. They're going to be in modules, and these modules go with your units. So if you're looking for module 1, this is, you want your students to get 90%. There's 17 topics in this, and it estimates about 46 minutes to complete that. So you'll get into this a little bit later, but let's go here. And I have chosen to work a lesson from Unit 5, and I'm looking at, I'm going to look at F2 in Unit 5. So I'm going to open up my curriculum guide. And at first glance, this can be a little bit overwhelming, so just work your way through. We just have the standards listed. This is your unpacking document if you need to look at that. Just have some clarifications if needed. Here are all your learning targets that you can use, your I can statements, some literacy strategies that you might want to use. All of your vocabulary words are listed here. This will be updated as soon as we can get this updated in SchoolNet. This will be your unit assessment and the code to get in. Here is a link to all types of Desmos videos, how-tos. In Desmos, it's a spreadsheet of different video tutorials. This is what we're going to focus on right now. I said that I wanted to look at F2. So for F2, it says that is found in my math textbook. So this is the Reveal textbook in lesson 5.4. And that's basically pages 285 through 292 in your textbook. So if you had your teacher edition, now's the time that you would look at your page numbers, and that's where we're going to find this, and we're going to look at lessons 5.4. Other things that you can notice down here at the bottom, we have some tiered supports. So when you're getting into your tier 2 and tier 3 supports, or if you need extra support for ML, these are color coded in your textbook for different levels. AL is your lowest level. That's the approaching. That might be considered students who are struggling, or on level or beyond level. And there are activities listed for these in the teacher edition textbook. So for instance, if you needed something for your ML learners from lesson 5.1, you would go to this page. So we're in lesson 5.4. 5.4 is here. There's a reteaching assignment there. So you have several different options. So 5.4 is here. That's the one we're looking at today, lesson 5.4. All your options, all of these, and your enrichment activities are listed, and this is based off of the teacher edition book. So these are your extra resources. Again, we are going to go into the dashboard for McGraw-Hill, and let's look at lesson 5.4 and see all your options. So when you log in to McGraw-Hill, you're going to choose your textbook, the Reveal textbook, and it takes you to this. This is the dashboard. So if you click dashboard, this is what you're going to see. So first of all, we're going to create a lesson, a launch lesson. So I'm going to go to my table of contents, and we know that this was lesson 5.4. 5 represents the module. So if I click on the arrow, 5.4 is this, lesson 4. Module 5, lesson 4, comparing functions. I chose this one because it's a big one for 8th grade. So when you open this up, again, this is going to seem a little bit overwhelming. The more you do it, the more you're going to get used to it, and the more you're going to understand it and determine what you like best. So let's just open up the top one for launch. So I clicked it, and you're going to see lots of options here. First thing I want you to notice is this toggle. Once you decide what parts of this launch lesson that you like, if you toggle to the right, it puts it into your presentation, which means it's going to open up similar to a slideshow for your students when they log in and choose this lesson. But let's say, for the instance, I want to see what this warm-up looks like. If I click on the warm-up, I'm going to see exactly what it looks like in terms of getting ready for this type of problem that we're going to see in 5.4. So if you wanted to add that, you could. This is just something the students could work on. And then if you click on show answers, it's going to show them what the answers are. So you could do that as a class. Again, this could be something that you only present to the class, or some things that you could assign. So for instance, let's say I don't want to include the warm-up for today. The launch the lesson is usually pretty good. It's going to have, notice up here I have the two different toggles, or excuse me, the two different pages. Launch the lesson, this is like your intro. This is like your grab their attention. Let's see how this relates to real world. So I would probably put this in our presentation, and I would talk through it and just start my lesson. Go here, let's talk about it a little bit, and let's see what kind of questions we have, and let's just discuss it for a minute, kind of open up our lesson. Notice at this point we haven't given any type of instruction. It's just a talk about it type thing. So I'm going to close that. So I could put this in my presentation, which I have. If I wanted to assign this, that means that I would assign it and it would show it for the students to work. I don't really like assigning the launch the lesson, but you may. So then we have today's standards. And this is just going over what standard are we covering. We are covering F2. If I can do this, I can compare. And then how can I use these practices? And this is pretty neat because it's going to show how it's going to make, what it's going to do in terms of making sense of problems. Let's say I do not need to include that. I would toggle it off. If I wanted to include it, I would toggle it on. I'm going to leave it off. Here's vocabulary for the lesson. So these two are the new vocabulary words for this lesson. You have a speaker over here, so if you need it read aloud, or if a student needs it read aloud. Let's say I like to do vocabulary a little different, so I'm going to turn that off. So far, the only thing that I've chosen in my launch to appear on the lesson that the students will see in the presentation is the launch the lesson. So I'm closing that, and then I'm going to open this. Now, what I need you to realize here is this explore and develop, and from here on, a lot of these appear as lessons in the book. So if you had your textbook open right now with this in the section for 5.4, you would see that these things appear for the students. So I'm going to open up this explore. And this is really in the order that you would do the lesson. It's all laid out for you. So this has 6 different slides to go with it. And it has a question, how can I compare 2 different forms? And then it shows you an actual example, and it says, let's talk about it. This example is shown somewhat in the textbook. Now, there are lines provided for the students to do some discussion and do some writing about what's going on here. So that's where we would talk about it, and then there's a question. We're just going to click through. You would talk about it as a class. Here are the exact questions that you would need to ask, so on and so forth. Click through all the parts until you feel like you're ready to go. This is going to talk about your calculator, what it might look like, so on and so forth. Keep in mind, this explore is the first thing that the students see in their textbook, and this is the textbook that they can write in. So they're going to see this, and they're going to go along with you in the slides, and then they can take some notes in the margin where the lines are for this explore activity. So I like to include that. I'm going to include it in my presentation. I'm not going to assign it because it's not something that I want them to do and be graded. This is something that I just want them to click through and see. So that's part of my presentation. This is a recording sheet that goes with this. So since we're doing it as a class, I really don't need that. Next is the learn. So this is how we're going to go over and talk about and teach it. I've included it in the presentation. This is also the exact example that is in their textbook. So you have the choice of going through it with them. You have the choice of assigning it and having them complete it in this presentation and it grades it. Or I would like, since I'm still doing the teaching part of my lesson, I would just go through this, discuss it, and let them maybe work together in pairs. And remember, this exact question is in their textbook for them to write on and take notes. So that's the learn part. I didn't assign it. I did include it in the presentation. So now here are the examples. So basically I'm going through just like the textbook, and I have an example that goes with this. I've included it in the presentation. So when I click on this example, this matches exactly what the students will see in their textbook. So this is the problem, the think about it, then different parts, filling in, and this is like a fill in the blank guided notes in their textbook, which is this is exactly what it's going to look like, and they're just going to fill in the blanks. We can check it here. Again, go through the slides. This is matching exactly what they're seeing. When it gets to number 4, this is a checkpoint. And this check is something that you can assign to the students. And if they start it, then it's going to grade it for them. And it's going to have like a part A, a part B, and so forth. This checkpoint is included in the textbook as well. So I don't really like to include extra examples, so I'm going to remove this. You can go back and use them later if you need to, or if you had students struggling, you could go in and do this extra example and assign it. Keep in mind, when anytime I click assign, this can go to all the students in the class, or it could just go to 2 or 3 students who needed this extra support. So here's the example 2. I'm including it. I'm not including the extra example. So then we have apply. So this is how we can apply this, and this is again in your book as well, in the student's book. I like these because it's applying it to a real life problem. It has nice graphics, it has nice graphs, goes through step by step, and this is in their textbook as well. So this could be something you're talking about on the screen while they're following along in their textbook. Here's an extra apply problem that's not in their textbook. Any of these extras are not. So I will not put that on there. So far I've went through those. And so now we have our options for the students to practice on their own. And these questions, a lot of them are going to match exactly what's in their textbook. And you'll figure out when you click on these to see which ones. Notice this and this is the exact same assignment. This is something where you can assign to them. And when you open it, it shows you exactly what the assignment looks like. Start assignment, and there are 7 questions. These 7 questions match the questions that are in their textbook. So you can either have them completed on here, assign it, and it'll check it, or they can do it in their book, and then you can go over it the next day or at the end of class. This version is the Word version. So this is something where you could download and print if you needed to. Extra practice, and then extra practice in the Word. I don't need these right now, but I might need them later for students who had issues or needed some extra practice. And then here's your assignments, your answers, if you want to print that off to have some answers. So here's some other options for you that you might need to add on. If you click on eSolutions, this is pretty neat because you can go here. This is the lesson for 5-4. I want the solutions and the answers, and I want to print it out. I want to see what it looks like. I just want you to show you what this looks like. This is the entire lesson, and it shows the problem. So this is the first problem that the students had in their practice section, and it goes through exactly how to work it out. So let's say you had a student who struggled with this problem. You could have this printed out for them. You could have it on a slideshow if you wanted to snip it into some slides, and they could go step by step by step by step to review it. This is every problem that's in their book in the practice section. So this would be really helpful if you had to remediate some students, or if maybe your EC teacher needed to pull some students out to go over some of these questions. And that you could pull up for any of your practice problems. Something that's really neat as well, personal tutors. So this is a video, and it goes back through comparing two functions. So you're going to have someone step by step go through this. So this is really neat if you had students who struggled. Maybe, let's say you gave a test and you had a group of 5 students who struggled with this concept. I could go in and assign, and I would just choose those 5 students to work on this. Great, great, great asset resource for you to use. Here's a spiral review. If you wanted to assign any type of spiral review, you might want to review this first though. The only problem with this is everything leading up to lesson 5.4. And we don't go in order of the textbook. We don't start with lesson 1 and go through the textbook, because that's not how our pacing works. So you might need to go through and view these just to make sure you're okay with them. One thing that I really like that this is going to help us a lot is most all of these are free response questions. And this is the area in our EOG that we struggle with the most. So that extra practice would be helpful. So I went through all of that section. And once again, we have even more resources that we could use. These are your answers for all of the learns and the examples. So if you wanted to pull that up and see the section in the book that's the learn or the examples, this is a PDF of all the questions. This is something that will be extremely helpful for your students with language barriers. So I'm going to click on this. And this is just a graphic organizer that might help for them to see the different ways to write something. Actually, some of these language development handbook activities are good for all students, but just realize that that's there. If you wanted to print that off, you could download it, you could print it, you could assign it to certain students. I think printing that off would be wise if I wanted to use it. This is the handbook, the teacher edition. So you're going to open it up and it's going to give you some ideas on what you could do, some help, and then the key for that question that was on there. So this is some vocabulary, and this just really talks you through what might help students with language barriers understand this more clear. There is a collaboration activity. If you wanted to choose that, you could put it in the presentation. You could assign it to students. And then here's all types of reviews. So this is reviewing the learn section. And that's when we talked about constructing linear functions from verbal descriptions. Again, if students had trouble with this, we could make a presentation, add it to the presentation, or we could assign it to a group of students or the entire group. This is a review of an example of that. Here's take another look. So this is looking at a rule, comparing two functions, a rule and a graph. Let's look at this one for an example. Again, this is another resource to use for your Tier 2 and your Tier 3 as needed for students who have been identified that need that extra help. So this is going to go through how to compare a table and a graph. There's 10 different slides that they click through. I'm not going to let them all load, but it's showing you step by step comparing. This is something that takes a lot of steps, and so I think this would be really useful. Okay, teacher added resources. That's something that you could upload something if you wanted to. If you wanted to upload one of your own slides or one of your own worksheets or something, you could download it there. So realize anything that I've clicked over into my presentation, so I didn't use any of these right now, but you can. Anything that's clicked over in presentation, it's going to be added to your presentation. So let's say I wanted them to do this, I would assign it. So I could click assign, and it's going to give me all kinds of options on what's the name of it, when do I want to start it, do I want to end it, do I want to let them submit it late, all types of settings to use for that. When you're finished, whatever you put into this lesson for 5-4, 5-4, whatever you toggled over, whenever students go there, they're going to see that. Or I could just click here and assign them this whole thing, and it's going to pop up as one of their assignments to work through. A couple other things just wanted you to realize here. I'm back on the dashboard. There are several different resources on here. This is a glossary of all your terms. This is a glossary of all the terms for the whole entire book in Spanish. This is what the student book looks like, volume 1 and volume 2. This is your teacher edition, student ebook, Spanish student book. So this is the actual textbook in Spanish. So something that might be useful. Every student has the option to find this. I found this actual page by just clicking the magnifying glass, and I typed in 5-4, 5-4, and it brought it up for me. 5-4. And it gave me the option. It's searching the book, and it's saying here it is. I click there. This is what it brings it up. So students could find this if they were having language barriers, and it takes everything in their book. So they have in their hand their textbook, and then they're able to see this online as well, to see everything in Spanish. And then they can fill in and write in their own book. The teacher edition, since I can't show you in your hand what the teacher edition looks like, or in my hand, I'm going to show you here some things to look for in the teacher edition. A little larger. So this is lesson 5-4. Please, please, please take a moment to go through and look before you start working on creating lessons and going back and finding worksheets. All of this is here for you. It goes through step by step. This page, the small page you see, that's the student version. This is where you found those differentiated lessons that we saw here. So all these that we saw here, you're now seeing this is differentiate, this is a reteaching activity. If you had students who struggled, it gives you things that you can do, suggestions to reteach that. I'm going to click to the next page. This is what the student page looks like. The answers are in the text. Here are some questions, some example questions. Remember, these are your approaching, that's your lowest level, on level, and beyond the level. So they're increasing in difficulty. If you needed to differentiate, if you needed to create some questions, and it goes with different slides if you needed, with your slides from your presentation. Again, more questions, more teaching notes. This is the second example that's in the student book. It's also back in your slideshow as well. Remember, we added in that example too. When it gets to the apply ebooks, it recommends things for you to do. Signs for non-productive struggle, what can you do? Questions you can ask. And these are those lines that I was telling you about where students can take notes. And then this is the last page of the lesson, and then it goes through the practice problems. So great ideas here. Remember, they did these checks. It gives you some ideas on what would you assign. If you had a check here, if they made less than this, what are the different questions that you would assign? It tells you depth of knowledge, how deep. Remember, the higher the level, the deeper the level of the question. So if you needed to differentiate that as well. And then this is the end. A collaborative practice, that's taking that lesson, that slide for the collaboration, and give you an option there. And what I would do if I went through this lesson is at the end, I would have the students tear out these pages, staple them together, put them in a notebook, put them in a binder, and that way they have them to refer back to, and you keep going with your next lesson from your unit, whatever lesson you were on, 5.5 will be the next one for F3. So lots and lots and lots of options. Additional resources on your dashboard. We have Desmos calculators on their dashboard so they can click here. They don't have to find it elsewhere. And some other tours that might help you, or some teacher resources that might help guide. The other would be assessments and assignments. Assessments is where you can actually make a test. We usually make our test, have our unit test in SchoolNet, so we would rarely use these, but I will send out another video showing how you can create an assignment, maybe a short quiz or an assessment quickly so it can grade it and move on for you, so you could maybe do some formative assessments with that. So I hope that this has helped. I hope that this opens your eyes to lots of new features that you can do with each lesson. Again, this isn't something you would have to do with every single lesson, but it could be, because it's all laid out step by step and you just pick out what you want to include. The more you use it, the easier it's going to get. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to a curriculum coach and we'll be glad to help.